Okay, so welcome. And today what we're going to do, we're going to talk about harmonies. Ooh, isn't that exciting? We've talked about harmonies in a lot of classes, and usually we tell you the same thing. Oh, it just comes on. Use duet, that sounds nice. Use AOC, that sounds nice. But today I'm going to really get in deep and kind of show you what exactly all those harmony buttons are doing, when to use them, when maybe not to use them. And I'm just going to kind of go from scratch as if you know absolutely nothing. For example, what is a harmony? Does anybody know? We got any hands raising or anything like that? What's a harmony?
Two or
Okay.
more notes. Two or more notes played
Two
together.
more sounds, yeah. Two or more sounds.
Very good, very good. Yeah. So it's adding extra notes. So basically what we're going to be talking about today is adding extra notes to our melody. So we're talking strictly about right hand stuff today. I might throw in some left hand later, but we're going to talk about this hand, the one on the right side. That's going to be playing your melody sounds. Now, basically, like any musical instrument with keys, when you play a note, you get one note. It's not adding anything extra. And for the most part, not all, but most of our instruments that we carry, whether it's a Lowrey or an Estey, they usually have a button called Harmony. And it's, I think, pretty much always a purple button. So it's a purple button on the right side of the instrument. It says Harmony. And you kind of have a choice a lot of the time of different types of harmonies. Duet, Aoc, Polka harmony, block harmony, fourths and fifths harmony is one of them. So they all have these names, and I know sometimes you look in your instruments, I know you all have different ones, but you'll look and say, what does that even mean? What is that doing? What's the difference? So I'm going to go over that today. So first, I'm just going to start out and kind of show you this. This is something I'll have you kind of write down because I think it'll be helpful to you. Put it on the screen here. So I'm going to go over a couple of these things right off the bat. So this is a good thing to write down first. So we're going to talk about harmonies. And I don't know if you guys are able to unmute from while the screen share is on, but if you can, if somebody wants to answer this first question for me, you'll have all these choices when you put on a rhythm and you decide, oh, I need to use a harmony. What's the easiest way to decide what to use? Might be hard to get to the unmute button.
Hit your harmony button.
Yeah, that's one way. The easiest way, we're going to start even more simply than that. The easiest way to choose a harmony is to let your instrument do it.
Right.
Does that make sense? All of your instruments, they have a button called either style setup or rhythm preset. They mean the same thing. And all that's going to do is, depending on what rhythm you choose, what type of music you're playing, it's going to add a sound on your keyboard to go with that. And sometimes the sound that it chooses, it puts on harmonies or takes them off. So it's kind of choosing it for you. So that's the easiest way. So I'll play an example here just real quick because this is great. Any of your rhythms, and especially if you have setups or presets in the center, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 through 8, 1 through 10. You have different sounds to choose from, and it's automatically going to turn on and off your harmony button. So just as an example, I'm just going to go through for like 30 seconds and just play a couple different instruments and try to listen. Just try to listen for if there's a harmony or if there isn't. That's all you got to do. Here we go. Okay, there's no harmony on that sound. Just a trombone. Now let's change sounds. Ooh, there's a harmony on that one. One more. we've heard that ending a few times, so we'll skip that. So, did you guys hear the difference? Anytime I went to a different sound, it actually had a different type of harmony. And you can kind of hear the difference depending on what types of instruments we're using. So, let me go back to that screen here real quick. And just another quick example. So that's the easiest way to choose a harmony. The second easiest, and this is just kind of basic here, this is just depending on what song you're playing, who sings it. Just think about that. The second easiest way is to think of how many people sing the song. Let me give you an example of that. That might not make sense. An example would be the Everly Brothers. How many people are singing those songs?
4.
I heard somebody say
Two.
two. Two.
Two.
Two. What would be a good harmony button to press if there are two people singing?
Duet.
Duet.
Duet. See, there you go. You already did the math. You thought about it. Use duet harmony. So just like I said, another example here. I can just put on, let's just do a simple rhythm here, like this. That doesn't sound like Everly Brothers. Let's put on a harmony. So you can tell right away it just sounds infinitely better. All I touched was duet. So that's just kind of another way you can do it. Instead of letting it set it up for you, you just think, well, I'm going to play an Everly Brothers song, and there's two of them. So let's put on duet. If you're doing something by the Andrews Sisters, how many Andrews Sisters were there?
4.
I see some people going
4.
like this. I think
3.
it's 3. Yeah, 3. Unless there was another one that they fired from the band earlier on, maybe. I don't know. But typically it's been 3. So if you wanted to play the Andrews Sisters, you can put on a harmony button that has 3 notes added to it. So I'm playing the same note with my right hand. What the instrument is doing is it's adding those extra ones for me. And how does it do that? Let's get into it now. So what I'm going to do, I might scoot over to this instrument behind me. And then what I'm going to do is kind of go over this sheet I had up here, this one right here. And we're going to talk about what these harmonies specifically are doing for us. So let me move my cart. And if you want to write down that thing on the bottom where it says instrument/harmony examples, I'm going to kind of go through. And basically, I'm going to give you, for each type of harmony, what style of instrument would go well with it. Does that make sense? So you can pair them up. That's another way to decide what harmony is. You know, for example, if you're going to play, you know, Latin music and you want vibraphones. Do you know how vibes work? They're played with mallets, and you have 2 of them. So a good harmony to use for 2 notes, once again, would be
Duet.
Duet.
duet. You got it. So you guys are smart. Yeah, duet harmony. So you can have 2 notes. So I'll go through some examples based on what instruments you're playing, what harmony would sound the best. And I'm going to even show you why that is. So this is really, really cool. So first of all, just to know how the harmonies work in general here. So like I said, you're still playing 1 note on your right hand. Just 1 note, and what your harmony feature is doing in your instrument, it's going to add extra fingers for you. It's adding extra fingers below yours, typically, like that, where all you need to do still is play that 1 note. But how it works is it actually kind of goes with whatever you're doing on your left hand. So that's why I said I got to talk about the left hand a little bit. because based on what chord you're playing, for example, here's a C chord, just with the easy button on. Your right hand harmony notes are going to depend on what chord you're playing, because they're going to do different notes if I'm playing an F chord in the left hand, or a G, or maybe a minor chord, or even diminished, or as some people say, demented chords. So you have different options here, and what we're going to talk about now is what's the difference between all these. So I'm going to show you on the screen. Oop, I don't know if you could see the end there. Can you guys see all of that stuff on there? I can't tell from my end here. So basically, some of you might have a button that says something like Duet, which means that's what you got. You got Duet Harmony. Some of you might see AOC. That's another type of harmony. And for those of you with a touch screen, this is an example. This picture is just an example of a touch screen model. It actually has, what is that, 15 different harmony types in the screen. So if you look at the left, you just tell it where you want it. Do you want it to go on the upper keyboard or the lower right? And once you turn it on, you just pick what you want. So let's talk about the differences, okay? So before I get to that, do we have any questions so far? Anything I've talked about? Just kind of keeping it basic so far. Any questions at all? Good, and I don't even see anybody sleeping. That's good. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you. Oops. Ding darn it. Hitting buttons on the computer. I'm not meaning to. Okay, let's look at what these are doing. So, for example, I'm just going to turn on that screen you just saw where you see all the different harmonies in the center. And what I'm going to do with this left-hand chord, just so you don't have to listen for it, you can, I'm just going to turn down the volume of that left hand. So it's still playing that chord, you just can't hear it. That way, I can show you what the harmonies are doing without you having to hear the bass parts too. So basically, if I play just one note on the right hand and none of the harmonies are on, that's all you're going to hear, that one note. Now if you go to your harmony button, which like I said, they're purple, and on the right side of your instrument, if I touch different ones, just listen for a second, especially if you have headphones. This will sound kind of neat. Like I said, without harmony, it sounds like this. Let's add some. That's one. Let's do the country harmony. Block harmony. Hymn harmony. Fourths and fifths, also called rock. So it's just kind of neat to hear the differences, but then you think, well, how do I use that? When do I use those? What's the difference actually? And the difference is this. So you don't have to memorize any of this. Don't worry. What I'm going to do is just kind of mention here kind of briefly the difference between all of these. If you look at the top note and the top chord, this is just an example. If you're playing a C chord and you play a C note right here, this is the note it's going to add for you underneath. And then if you play a D note, this is what it's going to add. So it's kind of cool. You can sort of see the differences here now. Visualize it, not just hear it, where you kind of have to guess at what the differences are. This is cool. So duet harmony, let's look at that. So my example that I just mentioned is if you're playing something maybe Latin, and it has something like vibes. Like I said, you play those with two hands because it's a mallet instrument. And what it's going to do is add not just that C note, but it's going to add E underneath. So it's going to do that for me. So rather than have, like this example, rather than have a one-armed mallet player, you can have two hands. So this is with one hand. So if you were just playing single notes, kind of dull. It doesn't quite sound right because you need to have two mallets. So I'm putting on the duet harmony. infinitely better just based on that. So what you can write down if you'd like, I'm going to go through some different harmonies that are in your instruments, and I'm going to tell you what instruments or sounds, like vibes, for example, would sound good with that. Okay, and when you might want to use these. That's if you want to decide for yourself. Like I said, you can use the presets and it'll do it for you. But if you want to do
Excuse
it
me,
yourself,
Sean.
yes.
Quick question. Suppose you don't touch the harmony button and you play two different notes on your keyboard. Will it sound like harmony at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what the harmony button is doing, is it's just doing that for you. It's adding a second finger
Even
that
if
you
you
don't
don't
have
touch
to.
the harmony button,
Yeah.
you are just like playing two notes, two different notes on your keyboard.
Yeah, it does the same thing. So if I play without the music in the background, I can add extra notes myself,
Okay.
you know. But what's nice is if you don't know what the correct note would be, use the harmony button, and then it'll add the correct notes and put them in the right places. And all of them have kind of a different sound and a different feel to them. So duet's just a simple one. If you can use that with almost anything and it'll sound good. But what I would write in your notes is if you want to try the duet harmony, try it with something percussive, okay, like vibes, xylophone, sounds like that, even maybe a piano here and there. But just something percussive, or like I said, if it's a song with two singers, you can just touch the duet button. So that's example number 1. And then let me go back to that screen here, because this is so cool. I think it's so cool to visualize the different types. So we'll go through probably all of them here, just so you kind of get an idea of what they do. Octave. If you see that, what it's saying there is if you play the C note on top, it's automatically going to play a C an octave below. What instrument do you think that might sound good with? Well, I'll tell you. I don't see anybody raising their hand. Piano. Piano is going to be the best thing to use for that. So, like I said, you could play single notes, but it's nice if you use the harmony. Let's do, I don't know, something kind of ragtimey, and I'll show you what I mean here. So if I have just a simple piano on, let me turn that off. There we go. Just a regular piano. It'll sound nice. That's without any harmony. But if I want to sound like a professional piano player, a lot of the time you'll see it too. They'll stretch their hand and do it like that. Which might be hard for you to do, to stretch out your fingers. It doesn't feel good to me. So I'm just going to press the octave harmony. I'm going to turn that on and do the same thing. So you can hear it kind of fills in the sound a little bit. It makes it sound like, ooh, they know what they're doing, and I do not. So that's good. That's why it's great to use these harmonies. So that's octave. You want to use it with something like a piano. That's my suggestion. Piano always sounds good with the octave harmony. Now, let's get into some really fun ones. I don't even have my notes here. Let me put my notes in front of me. So let's look at the one on the left there, 4-part. Holy moly, it's adding a bunch of extra chords there, or a bunch of extra notes. So that's saying, like I said before, if you play a C note, it's going to play G, E, C going down right below it. So if you notice too, those notes are very close together. They're all pretty close. They're not all over the staff there, just tightly knit right there. So something that might sound really good with that is something like strings. So if you want to try out 4-part harmony, try it with something like strings. Let me put on some string sounds here, and I'm not even going to use a background. Let's just go without. I'll do what I did before, just use the easy button. Here's without any harmony, with no harmony on whatsoever. very thin. It's going to sound like this. And then if I add the 4-part harmony, just turned it into a full orchestra. And they're not playing any weird notes. They're just playing, if I play a C here, they're just playing a whole C chord underneath my note. So it's playing all like a full C chord underneath my one note. So that's different than the duet, not just adding one note, we're adding 3 more. So that's why there are 4 parts to it. Your part, and then the 3 underneath. Now, so strings, that's what I would write for that one. 4-part harmony is good with strings. Now this one, it's kind of goofy here. This is actually incorrect. This should actually say block harmony. This is block harmony. Okay? So this is what block harmony looks like. This is my favorite harmony. Okay, you can write that down, Sean's favorite. But the reason for that is it doesn't just add a chord like this has, just like the 4-part, this has C, G, E, C underneath, but it also adds this A, which is a goofy choice. That's making it a really colorful chord. It's a jazz chord. So if you want something to sound jazzy, turn on that block harmony. It's going to add some kind of jazz chords to it. Basically, it's adding a 6 to your chord if you know your numbers, like G7, A minor, C6, you know. It's making it a C6. So if you want something to sound jazzy, use that. I think it sounds good with a lot of different instruments. What I would write down, if you want to try block harmony, what's going to sound the best is brass, like a big brass sound, or an organ sound. So if you want to sound like a really professional organ player, that's what they do a lot. They add a lot of jazz chords, things like that. So let's just do a quick example of that. So you could do something like, you know, Glenn Miller, or let's do Beyond the Sea or something like that. Let's try that. Let's do this rhythm. I'm just going to put on number 10 for brass, and I'm going to put on block harmony. But like I said, I'll start without it first, and I'll put it on eventually. Super thin. Now let's try it once more with block harmony. So infinitely better. It just sounds really thick because not only are there 3 notes underneath yours, there's 4 notes. So there's actually 5 notes playing when you play your single finger. So it adds a whole lot of color, especially, like I said, with anything kind of jazzy, brass or organ. It sounds real cool when you play like a big organ sound and have that harmony on. It just sounds so full and colorful too, because it's, like I said, kind of jazzy. So let's look a little bit more. We've got a few more to do. These ones, well, let's do some easier ones. Those are if you want to add a whole bunch of sound. Let's just add a little bit of sound here. Let's look at these ones. Okay, this first one on the top left there, it says polka. This one is cool because the notes are kind of separated a little bit more. So you have that C on the top, and it kind of puts the 2 harmony notes quite a bit below, because it doesn't want to make it too full, but it needs some lower end in those. So on the newer instruments, anything EY or EX series, it's actually called Octave Duet. If you have an A series or anything previous to that, it's called a polka harmony. And I bet you can guess what type of music it sounds best with. Do we have any guesses? Anybody want to guess?
Accordion?
Yeah, it's going to sound good with accordion and polka music. So right away, if you just go to an accordion somewhere, I got one right here. Let's put it on. What number is it? Number 5 here. If you put on polka harmony, it's going to sound good. So it kind of automatically does the work for you, but definitely write accordion for that one. That sounds good. But that's another one that sounds really good with a lot of instruments as well. But it's mostly for if you don't want a ton of stuff going on, but you want it to be just a little bit more full. That's a good one to use. The one that was next to it, this is a weird one. Country harmony. Country harmony is a weird one because this is one of only 2 harmonies that actually play the harmony note above your melody. So this is saying if you play that C note right there, it's actually going to add a note above rather than below. And some of you have been with us for a while, and you might know that there's a new rhythm in some of these instruments based on Floyd Kramer. He played the country piano, and what happens is when you use his piano sound, it turns on that harmony automatically. And if you look at this bit right here, it actually adds grace notes for you automatically too. It's only with the country harmony that it'll do that. So for example, you know, if you want a country sound, and you don't need it, it doesn't always do the grace notes, so it won't get in the way all the time, but if you have something like a piano on, and you have Floyd Kramer, you can kind of hear it's actually doing that harmony and turning the notes into grace notes. So just an example here. Do you hear that? It's not just hitting one note, but 2 and doing a grace note. I love that. That's really exciting. And if you use that with country piano, that's the best instrument for that one. Country piano. And you can also use that harmony with fiddles. So if you want it to sound super country, put on some fiddles, put on a country piano, and turn on your country harmony. That one's kind of an easy one because it's in the name. Okay, let's see. Let's do a couple more, and then I'll take some questions again. But these 2 on the bottom are another couple of favorites of mine here. Hymn harmony. Yeah. Look at how separated those notes are. The reason those are is you think of a choir singing a hymn. You have the bass singer on the bottom. So you got Mr. Low Voice down here. And then you have your tenor right there. Your alto and soprano. So you have all the parts of a choir right in that one harmony. So another sort of obvious answer for that one is if you play anything with vocals. Like if you want to play something with a choir, you can do it with you know, something from church. You can play gospel music, or you can play just anything with a big sound. Here's without. Not too exciting, but then let's put on our hymn harmony, and we're going to have a full group here. You can really hear the low end in there. So let me take out that easy button again. I just want you to hear the back, or hear just my right hand. So if I touch one note here, oop, it's playing the bass. There we go. Just one note. And it's adding all the way down to here. Oh, I just remembered I have another camera too I can show. Not that you need it, but... So if I add this one note, what the harmony is doing for me It's adding. It's going all the way down. I think it's. Wait, let me do that better. I think these ones. And I think a little bit lower. So it's adding a bunch of extra notes all along the keyboard so that you can sound like a full choir. And you don't have to stretch two hands across it. You can just use one finger. So I'll hold that, turn on the harmony. Nice and full. That's great. That's one of my favorites. It just sounds really, really full. So like I said, use choir with the hymn harmony. You can also try strings if you want a kind of a big separation and a really wide string sound, big fat sound. You can do strings or vocals. And last one of this segment. This is also a goofy one. Barbershop. This is a silly one. Look at all the notes it's adding. It's doing a very similar thing to the vocal one. So instead of hymn, where you would want a big separation of notes, these are a little closer together. It's a similar theory behind it, though. You have your melody right kind of in the center here, just like a doo-wop group, if you remember those. You know, the quartet of, you know, Ink Spots, for example, something like that. You have your lead singer doing that C note right there. You have a guy below him going do-doop, do-doop, doop, doop, and then the low guy going ba-do-do-do, do-doop, doop. And then there's always the little guy, like me, just sitting on the end. You'll see him in those groups singing higher notes. So there's actually one note above the melody in this example. So rather than have that big spread like those, they're a little closer together, and you have the little guy singing right next to you, singing that harmony note. So we've got through a lot of them. So for that one, that's another one, vocal sounds. Vocal sounds great. Sometimes I like to use a brass sound with that too, especially if it's like the brass shake sound, because it just sounds real wild. So let's see if we have any questions so far. We've got a little bit more to do.
Harmony only applies to upper keyboard?
Nope, it applies to both. It depends on the instrument, however. If you have an SU series, it's only on the top for the most part. On the bottom, or on A series, which if you have a USB basically, you can add it to either the top or the bottom, so you can have an upper, lower. You just choose which one you want.
So
I got a couple things at once. Go ahead.
Sean,
Yes.
okay. Can you use just the, oh gosh, now I lost the name of the key, the easy button. Can you use just the easy button and have all these different sounds?
Yeah.
All these,
Exactly. Yeah, that's
and not-
exactly what I'm doing too. On some of these, like I just put the easy button on and put on a harmony and go. You know, and it
because
puts
on
the harmony.
hymns, I don't like to have a whole bunch of stuff down there.
Then turn it off. Yep. That's
Okay.
what I do that
Okay.
a lot. I just like the easy button sometimes. It's good for all sorts of styles of music. You don't hear drums in every song in the world, right? So
No. Thank you.
you're welcome. Go ahead.
This has
Anybody
been
else?
one of the best lessons
Yay! That's great.
for
Let's
me.
see. Anybody else? I see some unmutes, so I just want to see if anybody else had a question.
could you do a quick review of all the harmonies you talked about? Just like duet?
Yeah.
Used for piano, block, used for brass and organ. I think I missed one. So could you do a quick review?
Let me
Thank you.
put it on the screen so you can see a little better.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I made it kind of small, so I'm just making it a little bigger so you can see it. There we go. Here's our recap. So as far as instruments to use with each of these, I'll just go through pretty quickly here. So duet sounds good with vibes or percussive instruments.
Okay,
Vibes, xylophone, things like that. Octave sounds good with piano. 4-part, you can write strings. block harmony. It says 5-part here. Like I said, that's incorrect. We want that to say block harmony. So change that. If you're writing these down, write block harmony. That one you would do brass instruments or organ. Polka, you would do an accordion. Just a simple answer there. That also sounds pretty good with organ as well if you want to try that. Just extra. Country, we got a country piano would sound good, or fiddles. And then on the bottom section here, hymn would be good with a choir. You can also try strings, but primarily it'll sound good with a choir. And then this, barbershop, not necessarily a choir, but you'd want to use like the shooby-doobies, you know, the other vocal sounds, scat, things like that. Okay,
About AOC.
what's that?
AOC.
AOC, oh my gosh, I forgot about that one. Just kidding, that's up next.
Oh,
Yeah, so the ones we've gone over so far are the very specific ones. I have 2 more on the bottom of that sheet, and I'll zoom in. And this is, if you want it, all these pictures with the notes and everything, I'm going to try to put on our Patreon, so then you can look at it later as well and get an idea of what we talked about. So first, let me just do this so you can see it. There we go.
Sean, before you move on, the octave 4-part, I have a journey. What is that?
On the journey, let me look here.
not on the journey.
Oh, on the journey, it's not. Yeah, that one's not on the journey.
Okay, that's why I can't find it.
It might be. I'm trying to think. There's one called Open Harmony, and that might be. No, that's not that. There's another one called 3-part harmony that I'll talk about in a second. That
Okay.
one is also called Open Harmony. So it just depends on
Sean?
the instrument you have. Yep.
Somehow I missed on the first question, the easiest way to choose the harmony. I didn't get what you said.
Perfect. Let the organ do it for you. That's the answer.
Okay,
Let the
thank
instrument
you.
do it for you. Mm-hmm. Oops, somebody muted me here, I think. There we go. So there's just 2 more examples here on this handout that I have. 5-part, which is a great big one. This is another one where it's got 5 notes when you only have to press 1. And what you want to write for that, what'll sound best, is if you use something like woodwinds. So those notes aren't so separated. They're all pretty close together still, just like a woodwind section. You know, you have a flute, oboe, saxophones. You've got all sorts of different saxophones. They're all pretty close together in the same family. So 5-part, you want to use something like woodwind. So you can, for an example here, we can do Glenn Miller. Let's do Moonlight Serenade here. So if I want to make that sound really nice, without a harmony, it sounds kind of boring. It's just missing something. So if I add the rest of the woodwinds to my one note here. So it really fills in the sound really nicely. So woodwinds or sax section, some presets you put on, it's called sax section. If you just turn that harmony on or change it to that harmony if it's not already on, it's going to sound awesome. That's a good one. So any ballads, especially slow songs like that, I think it just sounds fantastic. You can play it with, let's do another example real quick. Something like this. Where's a good sound here? Yeah, here's just kind of a muted brass. You could put it on that too. It's just a little bit similar, but you know, you could do. So it just really makes it sound rich and thick, but it's not adding too many weird notes or anything like we talked about block. That's one of the goofy ones, but still my favorite. Okay, one more goofy one. Oops, I keep opening programs on my computer on accident. Let's see. There it is. The bottom right there. Most of you have this one. Some instruments it's called rock harmony. Some instruments it's called fourths and fifths. It's doing what's called a power chord, which it doesn't have the third note in the scale on there. So, for example, if you think of a C chord, the notes in that chord are C, E, and G. So far, every harmony we've talked about, besides octave, has had that third note in it, which is the E, C, E, G. So all of them have had that E in it. This harmony takes that note out, and it just puts in the G. So it's the 1 note and the 5 note. This one's pretty simple since it's called rock harmony on a lot of instruments. You can kind of assume with that one too what type of music you would use. And the instrument that would sound best with that for sure is guitar. If you're playing a guitar sound, that's one experiment you can do is put on that rock harmony or fourths and fifths. Same thing. So I can do, for example, let's put on 50s rock and we'll do rock around the clock. So if I don't have any harmony on, sounds like this. Kind of boring. Let's put on the fourths and fifths and listen to that. I'll switch it to this so you can kind of see what my hand is doing. I'm keeping it super simple, just one finger. Oops. So it just gives it a really nice rock and roll feel. Just one button, so that's rock harmony. And to kind of finish off this segment here, somebody asked about AOC. So let me show just a quick picture. You have several different AOC type harmonies. And I'm not gonna do these the same as I just did with those other ones. Because what's great about AOC, you have so many different types, and they're all pretty similar. So what AOC means, means a bunch of different things. Any old chord or automatic organ chord. Basically, these are your go-tos. So these are the simple ones. So if you're not sure what to use, try these. So we went in depth on all those colorful ones, all the exciting special harmonies. These are the ones, if you don't know what to do and you can't get it to sound right, try these. And one of them will probably sound good. And at this point, after going through all those other ones, you can kind of tell what it might sound like just based on these pictures at this point. AOC, that's just turning your one note into a simple 3-part chord. C, G, and E. If you go down a space to 3-part, it's doing the same thing, it's just making it very open. Kind of like that hymn harmony. Full AOC, it adds an extra note. Grouped AOC, it puts a whole chord kind of far away from your root note. And octave AOC, it plays an octave down from what note you play as well as the 2 in between. So really these are all pretty similar ones. It's taking the same notes, just kind of putting them in slightly different spots. So those are kind of the more generic sounds, which really, I was starting to think, what instruments would you use for those? And honestly, with all of these, you can kind of do any of them. So that's why I say these are your go-to multi-purpose harmonies. You can do voices sound good, like we said before. If we're playing an Andrews Sisters song, try AOC, because it's going to turn it into 3 notes. But I like it with organ sounds. I put AOC on all the time. Vocal sounds, put AOC on. But those other ones are going to be the more fun ones, you know, that you can kind of try out and kind of experiment with, see what you like. And that being said, if you put something on and you don't like it, just turn it back off. You're not stuck with it. It's okay. So Any questions on any of that? I've got just a couple additional sort of notes for you.
One question on the AOC. Can you select all those different ones you were just pointing out there?
Yep. It just depends on the instrument. Like I said in the beginning, not all instruments have every harmony. Some of them you just have duet. But now you kind of get an idea of what all of the other ones are doing. AOC on some of them, and then there are others that, like I said, with your touch screen. Let me see if I can bring that back up. Yeah, if you have a touch screen, it'll show you. Oops, put the wrong thing. Come on. Hold on. Yeah, if you have a touch screen, it'll show you all of them right there, just like that. So as you look on the left side of that, example of the screen, it says AOC, you go down one, open AOC, octave AOC, full AOC, and grouped AOC. So they're all similar, just different types of them, and you can choose them on your touch screen. Okay, yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm just going to add on a couple extra notes just so you.
Yeah, I've got just one thing, if I can, Sean.
Of course, Greg.
I've got a wonderful picture of you, and I'm talking about my image, and you're getting to be good looking too. but I'm hearing so when you play the organ, I'm hearing my sound break up, and
I might have it a little. I just might have it a little too loud or a little too.
I've got your voice is absolutely perfectly clear, and it's synchronized with your mouth, and so electronically everything looks just great on my screen. I have a relatively new iPad.
Good.
With so it's not like I'm dealing with ancient technology.
Good. And are you using headphones or are you using just your ears?
Yeah, no, I've got headphones on.
Oh, okay. Okay, I couldn't quite tell.
And I've turned those down.
Yep, that's just the thing with Zoom too.
I'm at about half volume here on mine, and it is breaking up a little bit. So
okay,
I just thought you'd like to know that.
Yeah, I like knowing all that. It's good to know. With Zoom, a lot of the time it's kind of weird because no matter what we do on our end, sometimes internet stuff with your end or our end.
Exactly.
It's hard to get the quality perfect, but we try. So.
And I agree with what someone else has shared as well. This is one of the finest classes I have been to since I've owned the organ for a couple of years.
Good, I appreciate that, and I'll put that.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. I'll put the
Yes.
handout on mine too.
You better tell Robert that I said that.
I don't have to. He's listening and he's spying.
My organ was breaking up just like that.
Oh,
Or
okay.
Yeah, I was getting the breakup too.
Okay, well, I'll work on that. As long as you know the meat of the class, that's okay.
matter.
Yeah,
No.
it doesn't matter. If I was playing a concert, I'd be upset. But otherwise, as long as you know what we're talking about here. One note I do want to mention that actually is another thing you might hear even when you're playing at home when it crackles up or sounds kind of muddy. Sometimes when you put on a harmony or you're playing a certain sound, you guys might have, I hear this all the time where you say, so I'm playing these notes and it just sounds gargly or muddy or goofy. It doesn't sound right. That's one thing to keep in mind on the keyboard here. Let me go back to that other camera so you can see. If you have something like, we talked about that hymn harmony. I'm just going to turn off my background rhythm real quick and just put on a simple sound, strings. Let's just do that. So if I have a big harmony like we talked about hymn harmony, which is spreading the notes kind of far away. So with my just one note here, it's adding all these notes down here. Now what happens to some people is they say, man, every time I play, it sounds gargly and kind of crackly. And that's because if you play these notes down here, your harmony is adding really low notes like this. So it might add some kind of muddiness or crackliness. I just made that word up, crackliness. So the key is you don't have to turn off the harmony, just play it up an octave. Just if it says F, instead of playing that F, play that F, and it'll just sound better. So if I do that same thing, rather than play down here, it sounds horrible. I could play it up here. So keep that in mind. If you ever hear where it's just, some people say, oh, I hate that harmony. It sounds so bad. It's not the harmony. Just play it up higher. Try that. So that's just one note that I thought to mention, because I hear that all the time. Oh, that harmony sounds terrible. Probably not the harmony. It's probably just where you're playing it. So.
Sean,
Okay.
I often when I'm playing use multiple fingers in the right hand. I was carrying over from my piano days when I was a kid before I quit everything. And now that I'm back at it, I still do that. If I'm using these harmonies, is it okay to do the 3-fingered chords automatic? I mean, it's automatic with me.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. You can use the extra notes you play, and it'll still play them. Sometimes it'll add extra notes still, in addition to the ones you're playing. So if you don't want it to sound, too crazy, you can just turn off the harmony. Another option is, instead of just turning off the harmony completely, or never mind, you can turn off the harmony completely, but some people, like at our store, we have this professional organist who comes in and plays, and he says, I hate when the harmonies come on. I want to do that. I don't want them to do it for me. But sometimes when you're changing the presets, like I said in the beginning, it'll turn on and off automatically, just kind of assuming you'll want it on. But if you don't, turn off your harmony and lock it. You can lock your harmonies. So that's one reason people would use that. So in the center of a lot of instruments, and I know you probably can't quite see it. Let me see if I can get close. On the center of the instruments, sorry, it's going to move around. I'll make you sick for a second. You have these different locks you can turn on. Sorry, it's all hard to see, but if you look at the bottom right, it says, there we go, harmony. So if you want to lock the harmony, you can turn that on, and as long as you have the harmony off, no matter what preset you go to, they'll stay off, and they won't come back on until you unlock it. I have another student who puts on he just loves AOC. AOC on everything. You can put AOC on and lock it, and just play that with every sound you want. So, just a couple examples there. All right, well, that's basically the class. If there aren't any more questions, I'll see if we have a couple extra announcements or anything, maybe from Robert or myself. Any more questions? Okay, well, I hope you did get something out of it. It seems like most of you did. That's great. And like I said before, those handouts where it has the notes and stuff, I'll see if we can put that on Patreon. So then if you want to just have a visual representation of what those buttons are doing, I think that's great. I love to see things sometimes. I can hear the differences, and I say, oh, that doesn't sound good, or that does sound good. But it's cool to see and kind of understand what they're doing. So that's what we got for today. Yep.
John, where do you get the attachments for Patreon? Because I was looking at the Roberts class from last week.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find the attachments.
Well, it just depends. Some classes don't have an attachment, so I don't know if his had it or not.
Yeah, he did.
But basically, let's look at it real quick.
Okay.
So Patreon looks like this. That's our Patreon website. And it's just a spot where, just a quick plug, it's a spot where you can go and you can contribute to our success here. And the more you do that, the more we can do this. And what happens is you get bonus stuff. So this was his class last week.
Right. I don't see any attachments.
Yep. This one does not have an attachment, it says.
Oh.
So unless you forgot, we can add something to it.
Okay.
But some of these you'll see, like this one.
Yep.
Here's a class by Joni.
Yep.
Right underneath, it's blue. You
Yep.
click on it, and it shows it to you. Oh, it's
Yep.
not letting me.
Okay.
Oh, I have to log in. I'm not logged in right.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you're logged in, but if you're logged in, it'll show you. It'll just bring it up on the screen, and I can do that with what we talked about today. So let's see. I think we have a couple announcements
Thank you.
from Mr. Roman here. So I'm going to spotlight that fella if he's ready.
I'm not ready.
Okay, well, I spotlighted you anyway. I'll go
All
back
right.
to me.
Well, I'm
Untitled.
actually in the moment going to, give me a second here. Because I was trying to get it done while you were doing that.
Well, that's okay. I can tell a joke in the meantime if you
Why
want.
don't you tell a joke in the meantime? Because I want to see.
Well, it's really quick. So I just heard this
Drag it out.
recently. It's a good story even. A grasshopper walks into a bar and the bartender says, "Hey, we got a drink named after you." And so he says, "You got a drink named Carl?" They didn't get any laughs, but it is funny. I'll just
Okay.
All right, back to you.
All right. Well, I'll have the attachment as soon as we're done with the class here. And also, I was listening to you guys with the crackling sound. One of the solutions is we should invest thousands and thousands of dollars into just Sean's store for the equipment. What do you think, Sean?
Oh, I think that's great. Yeah.
And I know how to do that. I did some math. If everybody on Zoom right now bought an organ in the next hour, I could pull that off. How's that for a subtle commercial? No, what I was going to mention, what Sean already mentioned a little bit, was a Patreon. For some of you who are not on Patreon, I encourage you to be a patron, because there are going to be, like, as soon as I'm done, I will put the attachment from last week's class. Some of the content is publicly available, and then some of it is just for Patreon members as well. But what I do want to tell you is, in the next 10 days, between now and the 31st, we're going to have our regularly scheduled classes that we normally have, the virtual classes, that is, as well as what's happening in the store. But we're going to have some other things happening as well. So next Thursday, a week from today, I will do my song of the month, and it's going to be a special dedication. So it's going to be a special class. And I've got an arrangement that I chose, a song that I think a lot of students, I was talking to Sean, he says, I can't tell you how many students have said they like this song, that I was surprised. But so I'm going to do that. And then there's a special dedication with that. And then also there are going to be 2, maybe 3 different virtual concerts. So stay tuned in onto the emails, because that's not going to be on the website. They're going to be just for people that are on our emailing list or our members as well. So stay tuned in for the emails. So if you see one, open it up and take a look, and it'll give you all the details. And the link will be available only through the email on those special events, those special concerts. Everything else will still be available on the website like usual. So that's all I have, Sean. That's my announcements.
All right. Well, everybody, just take care. Have a good rest of your day and afternoon and evening and morning.
Can you finish off with a song at least?
Oh, sure. Why not? I wasn't going to, but I can. I did mention the Andrews Sisters a few times, so maybe I'll play some of their stuff. And what do you know it? When I put on the boogie woogie style for Andrews Sisters, the first sound it gives me, it's called Sisters. And then if I look at the harmony, see what came on, it says AOC. It did it for me. I don't even have to. So here we go. Here's the Andrews Sisters.
Great class, Sean. Great.
Thank you.
Great
I appreciate
class.
it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, here we go. Here we go. Woo! Thank you very much for attending. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you much.
Thank you,
Thank
Sean.
John.
Sean.
Yes, sir.